So, after nearly a decade, Friendship is Magic, the much beloved reboot of My Little Pony, has at long last reached its conclusion. Given this is the end of the series, the writers decide to go out with a bang. And they certainly achieved that in more ways than one. Now, I'm not saying that the final in and of itself is bad. For the most part, it has a lot of things going for it. However, there were a couple odd writing decisions that pushed what should have been a satisfying and triumphant final into a very meh and rather underwhelming disappointment. If you enjoyed the final, that's fine. Opinions are opinions, after all. In fact, I don't advise you to take this video too seriously anyway. While the criticism is genuine, the more melodramatic points are there more for comedy than anything else. Also, this video is only discussing the two-parter, The Ending of the End. Clever title, right? Depending on the feedback for this video, I may consider doing a follow-up on The Last Problem, which is far from its last problem. The most unfortunate thing is that the final had all the elements to have been an amazing closer for the series as a whole. It could have easily rivaled both Twilight's Kingdom and the Cutery Mark as the best two-parter. While I can certainly point out some of the smaller issues, like the overly use of the Deus Ex Machina, or the fact that the majority of the two-parter was just a barrage of unnecessary action sequences, personally I can forgive those things. However, there were but two major issues that really tend to undermine the entire two-parter. Let's start off with the biggest flaw, having Discord be Grogar. There's a lot of things wrong with this concept. For one, you hype up a villain to be the big bad of the series, a villain that has existed prior and that fans of the older series really liked, only to then completely discord him into the dumpster and create what might be the most asinine twist in all of entertainment. There was nothing remotely clever about this twist. In fact, it was handled so poorly you would almost assume that it was directed by Rian Johnson himself. That's essentially the biggest problem with the season final altogether, and it's a problem we've been seeing a lot with modern day storytelling. The writers trying to subvert expectations rather than just telling a coherent story. Much the same with The Last Jedi and Game of Thrones, the writers are much more interested in shocking the audience, even if it means going against the logical progression of the story. Having a twist in a story is fine, but it still has to make sense in context of the story. Having a twist just for the sake of having a twist is bad writing. Even outside of just undermining the actual villain of the story, the writers also managed to completely destroy anything remotely likable about Discord as a character. Generally speaking, Discord has been a mixed bag since he was reformed. He was great as a villain, he was fun, quirky, unique, and in his own way menacing. But once he was fully reformed, everything memorable of his character was gone, and he was basically just an obnoxious comic relief character. At the very least, the fact that he generally cared about Fluttershy made his character tolerable. I actually really liked their relationship. It was an interesting dynamic, and it managed to make Discord's character somewhat grounded. The only other time Discord came across as a relevant character was back in Season 4, prior to being fully reformed. He was more morally gray, making it ambiguous to both the characters and the audience on what Discord's true intentions were. That's how his character should have been from the start, not good or evil, just a chaotic neutral. Someone that would appear only once or twice a season and cause a bit of mischief for the heroes to overcome. Just not anything evil enough to warrant him being in prison. But when the writers say that Discord is good, yet he still goes out of his way to do horrible things to the people he supposedly cares about, it just makes his character seem like an irredeemable jackass. Now that's where the final comes in. The problem is that everything that Sombra, Tyra, Chrysalis, and Kozuko had done is entirely Discord's fault. Prior to Season 9, Sombra was dead, Tyra and Kozuko were locked up, neither of them showed any real intention in trying to escape. Chrysalis was the only active villain still left, and going by her extreme villain decay, she seemed far too ineffective to be much of a threat. He's actually caused more destruction and mayhem here than when he actually was a villain. While the other villains aren't innocent in all this, it's difficult to put all the blame on them when they were being manipulated by Discord. Yet they're the ones that end up paying the price while Discord gets off scot-free. With writers nowadays being so obsessed with trying to subvert the expectation of audiences, which is almost always a red flag that they don't know what they're doing, why are they always so afraid to fully embrace their decisions? I will say this, the concept itself wasn't completely unsalvageable. If the writers really wanted to be daring and bold, they should have actually made Discord the villain. Have it that Discord is still secretly evil and that he was only pretending to be reformed, much like how he was in Season 4. If you want, you could even make Discord a tragic character in a way. Let's just say that Discord did truly value his friendship with Fluttershy and actually wanted to be good, but couldn't because of his chaotic nature. He tried to do just harmless pranks to suppress it, but deep down there was a subconscious part of him that would crave destruction. Unable to suppress his true nature any longer, he naturally reverted back to his older self. Everything in the season would then play out like normally, except the trio wouldn't try and betray him. They would help Grogar weaken the heroes and attain the power they sought, only for Discord to then betray them, naturally mocking Tyrek for when he had betrayed him earlier. With the power he had now attained from the trio, he would become all but unstoppable. The heroes would try to fight, possibly even working together with the trio, but regardless, Discord would be too powerful for the elements of harmony to defeat. When all was lost and the heroes were about to be destroyed, Discord would look back at the defeated and frightened ponies, especially Fluttershy, and for a brief moment the reformed Discord would try and take back control of himself, if only for a moment. Knowing that he cannot coexist with harmony and that his very existence would only cause harm to those he cared about, Discord would literally sacrifice his own existence to save everyone from himself. As for the trio, after discovering friendship within their group, getting betrayed by Discord, and most importantly, witnessing a villain who so desperately desires to be good but literally can't because it contradicts his very nature, they would realize that being evil really isn't what they had once imagined it to be. And unlike Discord, they possessed something he did not. A choice to remain evil or to turn over a new leaf. Once Discord is gone and the smoke had cleared, the trio would then approach the heroes. Though they still feared them at first, the trio would then ask for their forgiveness, even returning the power they had previously stolen from them. Being the forgiven goddesses that they are supposed to be, Celestia and Luna would allow them a chance to redeem themselves, at worst only giving them a reasonable punishment for their crimes. Instead of jumping so far into the future, the final episode would focus on the present. You would have all the cameos and everything from all the various creatures that appeared throughout the series, but it would also focus on Tyrek, Chrysalis, and Cozy Go trying to find their place within Equestria. You can certainly get a lot of good comedy out of that. If the writers had done something like that, they would have made a twist that actually made sense in context of the story, while still providing an epic and heartwarming final for the series. That's how you subvert expectations without undermining what was already set up. Take it from The Last Jedi. A twist should never make the story less interesting. The other major flaw with this final is how the writers handled the overall fate of the Legion of Doom. While the decision to have Discord disguising himself as Grogar undermines the series final, what happens to the other villains manages to do something much worse, undermine the entire message of the show as a whole. Let's play the scene out. The trio has been depowered by the elements of harmony. They are now defeated, powerless, and scared of what's to become of them. Tyrek and Cozy Go in particular are pretty much on the verge of begging for mercy. While they certainly deserve punishment for their crimes, their punishments feel overly cruel, especially for two goddesses who everyone views as compassionate and forgiving. The most disturbing thing about this whole scenario is how it all plays out. It'd be one thing if they just had the elements turn them into stone while they were still at the height of their power, but having them be defeated, only for the heroes to then finish them off after they're already weakened, is a bit messed up if you think about it. Although, I suppose if there is some consolation, at least for me personally, Cozy Glow's fate did inspire a very fascinating character of my own, though that's a story for another time. Speaking of the elements of harmony, this is actually the first time that the characters order a punishment on top of what the elements had already done. This actually does raise a certain question regarding the overall purpose of the elements in general. Since the beginning of the show, the elements' purpose seemed to purify evil and restore harmony to the world. For example, they vanquished Nightmare Moon while leaving Luna completely unharmed. The elements seem to decide the best course of action regarding each individual villain, yet here the elements chose not to kill the trio nor turn them to stone. All they did was depower them, which to me implies that the elements did not view them as irredeemable, otherwise they would have destroyed them much like they had done with King Sombra. It was only afterwards did the sisters and Discord decide their final fate. This in turn raises another question of morality. There's a big difference between punishment and revenge. Going by Celestia's own comment,
"There isn't a punishment worthy of all you've done."
She clearly has little interest in punishing them for their crimes as opposed to making them suffer. This is not the mindset a righteous hero should have, let alone one that is supposed to be viewed as a noble leader. It actually just ends up making her look like a tyrant who would happily abuse her powers on a whim. To make matters worse, you have Celestia and Luna gleefully smirk into what has essentially become a public execution, even allowing Discord of all beings to choose their fate. May I remind you that Discord is the one that is actually responsible for everything that has happened in all of Season 9. He's the sole reason that the trio is even in this predicament in the first place, yet he gets to choose their punishment, actively participate in it, and then proceeds to mock them afterwards. It's actually quite ironic if you think about it. Here we have Princess Celestia standing side by side with Luna, a reformed villain, while being advised by Discord, another reformed villain, and standing idly off to the side is Starlight Glimmer, but another reformed villain. Even better is the fact that the episode A Royal Problem heavily implies that under different circumstances, Celestia herself could have easily become a villain. Daybreaker, who is more or less her own internal conflict, her own Nightmare Moon. Apparently, she's learned nothing from that episode, nor from the whole dilemma with her own sister. But what really cements how disturbing this whole scene is having the entire cast, the main six, characters that are supposed to be the embodiment of love and tolerance, laughing at what is more or less a public execution of a child. As I said, it's messed up on many levels, regardless of what she or the others have done. There's a reason why you rarely see the hero outright kill the villain, especially when they are defenseless. It subconsciously damages how you view the hero altogether. Regardless of whether or not the villain deserves it, the audience expects the hero to be morally above the villain. The main six aren't anti-heroes. They were created as well-intentioned and heroic, always looking for the good in others and never taking enjoyment in their suffering, even when it comes to the villain. Even more adult-oriented material would you rarely if ever see the hero take an enjoyment at the villain's demise. At best they're just relieved that the villain is defeated and the world is safe. Take Dragon Ball Z for example. After Goku finally obtained his Super Saiyan form and then proceeded to give Frieza his much-deserved beatdown, but at the end of it all, once Frieza is defeated, scared, and begging for mercy, Goku still couldn't bring himself to leave him to die. Ironically enough, Goku put more effort in trying to reform Frieza than Twilight Sparkle, aka the Princess of Friendship, put into even trying to remotely understand why Cozy Go is even evil, let alone trying to reform her. Despite Frieza being one of the most evil and sadistic villains in the history of fiction and even killing Goku's best friend, he still actively went out of his way to try and reason with him, even though he was already more powerful than Frieza. He only finished him off when Frieza discorded his mercy and still tried to kill him. Yet even then, Goku's expression at Frieza's demise is more that of pity than satisfaction. Now tell me, have you heard this before? Oh my god, why do the writers keep reforming all the villains? Only then be followed up by, oh my god, why didn't the writers reform these villains? This is what we call a straw man argument. Nobody hates villain reformation in and of itself. Far from it, in fact. If there is one thing people like more than a well-written villain, it's seeing that villain be reformed. What people hate are rushed and poorly written villain reformations. Most of the reformations in the show have been handled generally very poorly. However, unlike nearly every other villain in the series, the trio's redemption was surprisingly well written. The writers actually spent time building it up and actually gave them a believable reasoning as to why they would decide to turn over a new leaf. We've practically witnessed what they would have been like had they turned good, and unlike many other villains, they wouldn't have lost what made them memorable characters as villains. They wanted to portray the trio as being completely irredeemable, then why did the writers go out of their way to make the trio redeemable? The final says they can't be redeemed. However, the episode Frenemies, as well as several other moments throughout Season 9, contradict it.
When we helped each other, it felt better somehow.
I haven't felt like this since before I lost my hive. Having others who will be there for you is pleasing.
The scene alone says that they could understand true friendship and that they have the potential to be reformed. FYI, if you want to portray a villain as being completely irredeemable, then you must never show that villain being sympathetic in any way, shape, or form. Never show the villain having remorse for their actions. Never show the villain actually caring about their henchmen. Most importantly, and this should be common sense, never ever show the villain questioning why they are even a villain and even having them consider changing their ways. Unless the villain was meant to be portrayed as being tragic, giving a villain even the slightest bit of sympathy could instantly change the audience's entire perspective of that villain as a whole. Not only did the writers go out of their way to give these otherwise one-note villains depth, but they managed to make them the best written characters of Season 9. They were far and away better written than the actual main cast. They didn't just give these villains depth, they had episodes even told from their perspective, making the audience emphasize with their characters more so than they normally would have. Cozy Glow in particular was more or less turned into an audience surrogate. Because of the contrast in her personality compared to the rest of the group, she was practically made into the token good teammate. You can't just make characters sympathetic one episode and then undo it in another and just say, Nope, that previous episode never happened. Now, if the writers wanted to make a more ironic ending, something that would intentionally go against the message of the show, as if to say sometimes there truly are people who can't be reformed, it would certainly add a bit of realism to this fantasy that everyone, regardless of their actions, can be reformed, which in real life would be more fictional than actual fantasy. They certainly could have made that work. In fact, Cozy Glow would have been the perfect candidate to get that message across in a way that would stand out to most of the audience. Going back to Season 8, let's just say that after Cozy Glow's original defeat in School Raise, instead of sending her to hell, have someone like Starlight Glimmer try and reform her, even taking her in as her student. Then throughout Season 9, the two will start bonding as Starlight and the rest of the cast teach her about friendship. As we reach the final, the heroes will confront the Legion of Doom, and with Cozy Glow's leadership skills, she will show them how to defeat Grogar, stopping him before he has a chance to rise to power. It will be set up as though Cozy was going to be the true hero of the series, except she isn't. The whole thing was just an act. She was only pretending to be reformed, and that she had been manipulating Starlight and the rest of the cast once again. With Grogar defeated, she would then reveal that she has been secretly running the Legion of Doom this whole time, now taking the power all for herself. Betrayed once again by this filly, the heroes would only be able to watch in sadness and fear as she destroys Canterlot and takes over all of Equestria. However, much like in the final, all the creatures that the main six had helped over the years would stand up against Cozy Glow's reign. To everyone's surprise, even the Legion of Doom, who were betrayed by Cozy, would help the heroes fight against her, perhaps even with the help of Grogar himself. In a typical Deus Ex Machina kind of way, the harmony from all across Equestria would create a rainbow blast of pure friendship power, or something, striking down directly at Cozy, leaving her defeated and powerless. In an act of desperation, Cozy would then plead for forgiveness. Despite how much Twilight wants to help her, she knows that no matter what, Cozy Glow could never be reformed, and even without power, she's proven too much of a threat to even just lock up. Twilight is left with no other alternative but to turn Cozy Glow into a stone statue for what most likely will be all eternity. She doesn't want to, but being a strong leader, she has to think about the well-being of her people. All the villains in the series, including the likes of King Sombra, Tyrek, Queen Chrysalis, and possibly even Grogar, would be reformed. Yet out of all these corrupt and supernatural villains, the only one who literally can't be reformed is but a little filly. Even though Cozy Glow is now crying and begging for mercy, Twilight would then begrudgingly proceed to petrify her. It would also have a noticeable effect on Starlight as well, seeing as Starlight only became a villain because she hated how Cutie Mark decided one's destiny. Yet here, she witnesses a filly, her student nonetheless, whose actual destiny was literally to be evil. I imagine that would have a big effect on Starlight's psyche, possibly even causing her to rethink her own ideals. Not sure how to cope with this realization, Starlight would then tell Twilight that she will be leaving Equestria for the time being, that she needs time to reflect on everything that has happened, and that she's not sure when, if ever, she shall return. Now, if that sounds like a very depressing way to end a kids show, well, that's because it is. But here's the thing, the writers literally did that. They said that a child is irredeemable and then had her turned into stone. The only difference is that in my version, it's portrayed in a much more tragic tone, whereas in the actual show, the entire cast are laughing and cheering as they damn a child for all eternity. When you really stop and think about it, it's really fucked up how they handled her fate. It goes against everything Friendship is Magic stands for, and really makes you question the mindset of how Equestria even operates. It honestly makes you sympathize with the villains, regardless of the horrible things they've done. Okay, I'm obviously exaggerating, I know, but it does make you wonder, was Starlight Glimmer right this whole time? Perhaps friendship really is just a facade to cover the corrupt and unjust world that exists to benefit those who know how to use friendship for their own personal gain, and those who are just empty vessels trying to find their reason for being. If friendship really is magic, and the elements of harmony more or less decide the destinies over everyone in Equestria, then why would the elements even allow a filly to be born in the world without the ability to be a part of that magic? Man, this show really has some deep philosophical themes hidden within its subtext. Or maybe it's just bad writing. Honestly though, after this final, I'm not sure how to feel about Friendship is Magic as a whole. From now on, whenever I think of this show, the first image that will pop into my mind isn't the colorful cast of characters and the many misadventures they've gone on throughout all of Equestria. No. The image that will forever be burned into my subconscious is that of a scared, mentally ill filly entombed in stone, desperately crying for help that will never arrive. For a show that is all about forgiveness and hope, that was quite the poetic note to end its legacy on.
Big adventure, tons of fun.
A beautiful heart, faithful and strong.
Sharing kindness